Hi everybody, I'm Diana. Welcome to today's episode of Sew in Common. And also what we're really going to talk about today is quilting with me, or quilting with machine embroidery. Today specifically, I want to talk with you all about piecing your blocks in the hoop. I know that that is becoming a much more popular way to piece your quilts today. And you know, I've been quilting for over 5 decades, and that's one thing I love about quilting is that, you know, when I started everything, we cut everything with dressmaker shears, and we used newspapers and catalogs to make our templates. We even used our pencils to trace out our quilting designs right on our quilt tops. Didn't harm them a bit. And that's how we quilted, because that was the technology that we had available to us. But I'd say in the 70s, mid to late 70s, someone decided, hey, why not do that piecing on our sewing machines? And you know, that was fantastic, because that brought in thousands upon thousands of men and women that wanted to piece quilts but didn't want to do it by hand. And I know my grandmother, she said that's a fantastic way to piece your quilts. And she is the one that taught me to quilt, and she was an award-winning quilter. And if she said piece with whatever technology you have available, then I figure it's okay to piece our quilts any way that we can. And what we're going to talk about today, like I said, is piecing on our embroidery machines, because I know there are a lot of folks out there that really love quilting, but they're like, I don't want to really learn how to do it on my sewing machine. I don't want to do all that cutting with rotary cutters and measuring. That's not for me. I'm really an embroiderer. Well, you know what? Now you can make your quilts right on your embroidery machine. You can even do your finished quilting on your embroidery machine. I do it quite a bit. I even did that 18-inch block, pieced it on my embroidery machine. Now that is a discussion for another video, and I'm doing several of these videos to show you some very basic blocks to help you learn and discuss different ideas that go around piecing in the hoop. Like, we'll do one small video on stabilizers. I'm going to show you one that I use today, but it's not the only one. We'll do another video on that, and talk a little bit about thread today, things like that. But the two basic blocks that I want us to discuss today are two of the very basic in quilting, and that's the half square triangle. I would say, you know, this block is the one that gets used the majority of the time for making our quilts, where you have half of it is one fabric, half of it is another. They might both be solid colors, or they could both be plaids or a solid and a print, whatever the pattern requires. And then the other one that's a really good basic is the quarter square triangle. And this one actually takes you up a step, because it allows you to do something besides just doing two colors opposite one another. With a quarter square, you could make each quarter a completely different color, or your pattern could call for 3 of the quarters in one color and 1 quarter in another color. So you can do lots of things just with these two blocks alone. Now, you will need some sort of a digital file. So you've either purchased a quilt block file, or you might need or want to make your own in a software system. Now, Dime really is the leader in quilting in the hoop. I know it's becoming more popular now, but they've had a software out so that you could piece your quilts in a hoop for several years, because I've been using it for several years. In fact, let me share my screen with you. We'll just talk about that for a moment. There we go. So if you go to shop.dzgns.com, you'll see under software, these are their different softwares. The one I use to build my quilt tops is my block piecer. It's a download, so you can start working in it. It's super simple. They have a library full of blocks. You click it, you click whatever picture you want to make, and then you can make it. There's more to it. I highly recommend that you go to one of Dime's free block party inspiration events that are hosted by all of the wonderful shops throughout the country. And I know that if you go to inspiredbydime.com inspiration events, you can find a list of those events as well. But the other thing I want to highly suggest is if you don't have an editing software that you use with your embroidery machine, download this free one from Dime. It's the Embroidery Tool Shed. I've had several of my students over the years use this software. It's a great basic editing software, and you can also print out some templates, and it's completely free to you. I've been using it for a very, very long time. So those are available to you. Go ahead and remove that now. Great. And so you're going to need, the reason I say editing software, because if you purchase a pattern for a block, it might be made of quarter squares and half squares and different squares that you can pull apart and use those to create your own. And you'll need an editing software to help you do that and to resize different individual blocks as well. Or you can try a software and make them yourself. So today, like I said, we're going to try the half square and the quarter square. And I am going to do more videos like this because I know this is becoming more popular. I know some of you are starting to subscribe to some monthly box ideas where you get kits with piece projects in them. And I know we get a lot of questions. Just how do I do it? How does this work? That's what we're going to talk about today. So let's go ahead and head over to my other camera. There we go. And take a look at a few things. So here's my embroidery machine. I am all hooped up and ready to go. But first of all, here is my pattern right on the screen of my embroidery machine. Let's close that window. There you go. There's my block. And there's only 4 steps to making this block. So, and in here, 2 minutes. That's how long it takes to do this in the hoop. And I know this machine is set on a medium speed of about 600. So very easy to do. Now let's talk about fabric for a moment. I highly recommend cutting out, whoops, gosh, my fingers are slippery today. Cutting out pre-cut pieces. Now, in software or in patterns that you buy, hopefully they will give you a template. I know that in My Block Piecer, you can create templates easily, and I believe in their free software, you can print out templates too. But it's really helpful because then you can use those templates to cut out your pre-cut pieces, either with a paper, or I know like in software, a lot of times you can save to your digital cutting file formats too. So that is fabric. And those are the 2 pieces we're going to use for the half square triangle. Other couple of things. I always piece in one of 2 colors, either a light dove gray or a light aqua. Today I've got a light dove gray in my machine. And I know this is a 40 weight polyester by Dime. There's also 40 weight polyesters in these colors in other brands. So if you already use other brands, you might already have one of these colors. Truly, the light gray is the one I piece in the most. The light aqua is the one I do my finished quilting in the most. So hopefully that's helpful for you. You're also going to need something to, this process is called stitch and flip. And so when you flip your pieces, you're going to need something to kind of roll over that seam and keep it flat. So you could use a little seam roller like this. You could finger press if you like. I really love the Clover Mini 2 iron with the small triangular head on it, not the large one, but the small one. I love that. In fact, I use that myself. I don't have it plugged in right now. I don't have quite the space while I'm videotaping, but I love this one, and that's what I use most of the time. But if I'm going to travel somewhere to do a class, I always take a little seam roller like this because I don't know, I might not have a place to plug in that little iron, and this works great as well. And then you're going to need to have, of course, your hoop, which will be the size that you can fit your block in. So I'm doing basically a 6x6 block. It's 5.585 by 5.85. And so I'm using my traditional embroidery hoop that is a 6x6 hoop. And I am using a cutaway no-show mesh stabilizer. Now, there are several stabilizers you can use, and I will go over those in another video, but just know a light no-show mesh cutaway is always fine to use when you're piecing your blocks in the hoop. And I'm sure you have that. I like using pre-cut pieces if you can find packages of pre-cuts. If not, just cut it off the rolls like we usually do. So the last thing I will tell you about, you're going to probably want to have a glue stick handy. I just use a basic Elmer's non-toxic glue stick. They're purple, so you can see where you put your piece of glue, but that purple fades away, so you don't have to worry that that's going to stay in your fabric. There's lots of good fabric glue pens that you can buy at your fabric stores. So if you can find those, feel free to use any of those. They'll work fine. I get these because they're less expensive, and I stock up on them every time the stores start carrying school supplies. If you're going to use a glue stick that is not from your fabric store, make sure it says non-toxic on it. That will indicate to you that it's okay to use with fabric. It's not going to start to break down your fabric over time. Anything that doesn't say non-toxic could start causing problems over time. So when you go to stitch out your block, we're at that point now. The first thing typically that you do is you stitch out the entire pattern right onto your stabilizer so that you know where you're going to lay your pieces. Now, you might have a question, what about my batting? Do I put my batting down? If you're doing a project kit and it tells you to put your batting down, then yes. But if you're piecing blocks that you want to make into a big quilt, and that big quilt top, you want to layer it with your batting and backing and then quilt it as one big piece like we do with a more traditional quilt style, then you don't need to put batting in at this point, okay? So the very first thing we'll do is we'll let it stitch out our block pattern. And this is just going to take a few seconds to do this. And again, I'm just using that light dove gray today. I'll take this off so that you can see it when I'm done, because I know if I used a darker color, you would have seen it. But so as I was saying, I'm going to be doing several of these videos. I'm going to be doing another one where we do a square in a square. Some people call it a diamond in a square block. But let me tell you about naming blocks. There are, every block pretty much that I know has more than one name, and that's perfectly fine. Just go by whatever name you know a block by, or by whatever name the block is for a project that you're using. The name doesn't matter nearly as much, because over time, someone may have taken what we know as an Ohio Star block and put it into a friendship quilt, and they ended up calling it a friendship Ohio Star or something. Whatever name you want to use for it is fine. So here we go. We're almost done. And I'm just going to advance here. This particular software that I use also will stitch out a piecing number on here for you. So piece number 1, piece number 2, that type of thing. I don't stitch those out because I don't really need them. I also print out something called a map on a piece of paper, which will have all my pieces numbered for me. So if you're buying a pattern, it may come with something like that, or if you're creating your own blocks in a software, make sure that that software has the ability to print that map out for you. So let's show you, whoops, there we go. So this is my map stitched out right on my piece of stabilizer. So this is going to be 1/4 or 1/2, and this is going to be the second half. So the very first thing I'm going to do, because it's showing me right here, can you see that in my small window here? It's telling me to lay my first piece of fabric right here on the bottom half. So I always lay down a lighter fabric first, because in traditional quilting, we tend to press to the dark side. So if I lay my lighter side down first and then flip it and press it, it has that same idea of um, pressing to the dark side. However, if you're using a pattern and it tells you specifically to use one color in one place and one color in another, follow that pattern because there's a reason for that. So I'm going to just put myself a little dab of glue stick right there on the back of my fabric. And then I'm going to lay my fabric right on this line. And it fits, let me rub that down so you can bring it up here to see it. It fits right in that area. And this area in the center here, that's the seam allowance, because seam allowance is built in for you. You don't have to calculate that typically when you purchase a pattern or if you're going to create your own blocks. Typically that quilt math is done for us. So now, there we go. And we're going to stitch out our very first block. Now, here's the tip that you should remember. When you're doing a block in the hoop, your first piece of fabric is always laid down right side up, okay? You might even want to make a note of that. First fabric piece always right side up. And see how fast this stitches out? This is even on a medium stitch speed, and it's going really quickly. Okay. Now, if we look back over here, let me bring this out first and show you. Let's take a look at this. So you can see this is stitched down right onto my stabilizer. So it's perfect, ready to go. If you look back over here onto my screen, now the next step is just this line here. You'll have instructions with your blocks and stuff, but what that line means is that it's time for me to lay down my other half of my square, and it's just going to stitch a line right down there. That's all it's going to do. And so with a second or any other piece of fabric, so we'll see that better when we do our quarter square, after your first piece, all other pieces get laid down right sides together, just like this, right sides together or right side down. So I'm just going to literally line that up right on top of my other piece, put it back in my machine. Now, here is where I could use a piece of low tack adhesive tape and just put it right across there to kind of hold my piece down if I wanted to, because I don't want to use glue stick there because I don't want glue stick on my top piece. But if you feel comfortable having a piece of low tack adhesive tape there to hold down your fabric while it's stitching just like that, feel free, or you could put one right across. You don't need much really. Half square triangles tend to stay in place. It's when we start doing more complicated patterns where sometimes that tape and the glue is a little more handy. So now all we're going to do is stitch out our next step, which is to tack down this second piece on top of the first piece. Perfect. I'm just going to take that piece of tape away. Now we're all ready to our last piece, or our last step. So right here, they're put together now. Now, if you see this last step here on my screen, it's showing a line in the upper half of the box right there. That's going to tack down this second piece once we flip it. And all we do to flip it is literally flip it over, and then you need to press it down. Now, I don't want you to take, when you're pressing, and pull this out and try to make sure that it covers this upper line here, because that can easily distort your fabric because sometimes you're dealing with biased edges. So all I want you to do is flip it up, give it a little finger press at first, and that easily fit over my line anyway. Now I'm going to take my little seam roller and I'm just going to roll it kind of press that seam. Like I said, I like using that little iron, but if you don't have one, a little seam roller or just a good finger press works. Now, if you are a little concerned about that popping up, don't be. This is the time now where you take your glue stick, just rub a little on the back of that piece, flip it back over, and that will stick right down for you. And then we're going to put it right back into our machine, and we're going to stitch out that last piece. And you know, if it makes you feel comfortable to kind of leave your hand there, just keep it away from the needle while it's doing that, that's fine. And that's all it takes to do a half square triangle. I have one half square triangle done now. Perfect. So here is our finished half square triangle. Now I want to share with you something about when you stitch in the hoop. From this stitch line out to your fabric, if you use pre-cut pieces, is 1/4 inch. So all I have to do is take my piece out of my hoop. Let me just untwist that a little bit right there and pop that right out. There we go. So all I have to do now is lay my ruler on the edge there and then cut all the way around. And so when I go to stitch these together, I know right there is my 1/4 inch line. That'll give me my 1/4 inch seam allowance for when I am stitching these together. So here's my first half square triangle. If I wanted to stitch these together, I would, let's see, here we go. I would lay these down. That's not there. Here's the way I want to do it. I would lay these down. I would stitch them right on that line, and then let me see if I can do this and then flip it so you can see it better. So right there's 2 of them together, and you can already see I'm already creating a pattern that way. Or I could do it with the other fabric showing, and I'm already creating another pattern that way. So half square triangles, you can create a ton of patterns with the half square triangle. Now I'm going to set that one aside, and let's make our 1/4 square triangle. I'm going to take and hoop another piece of no-show mesh stabilizer. Let's see, can I put this down so you can see? There, you can see that a little bit. So I've got a small space right here where I'm working, but I think you can see that. So like I said, I'm just using a piece of pre-cut no-show mesh. I like buying packages of these for my 6x6 and smaller hoops. I think they work great. And there we go. I didn't untighten it quite enough, but it worked. Now I'm just tightening it back up. Let's bring this back up so we can see our machine again. There we go. I'm just tightening my screw. I could not use traditional hoops anymore if I didn't have this special screwdriver for my hoops, because I've had carpal tunnel surgery on both hands. And so using these, I don't use my traditional hoops much. I use magnetic hoops quite often, but for this little 6x6 design, it worked perfect. So now I just have to come over here and choose my file type. So let's go back here. So you'll come into your machine, your embroidery machine, wherever you hold on to your files. There's my 1/4 square triangle. Actually, I think that's the wrong file. That was for something else. I wanted the other one. I've got a couple of them in here. I want to make sure that this is I want to make sure this is my right one. So I'm just going to look at this file for a moment. Pretty sure it is. Yeah. Okay. Great. All right. So there's my file. Now, the very first thing I want to do, I want to go back to my first. There we go. Because I want to print out, or I want it to stitch out. So it's going to stitch out the first half of the map for me. Now in this one, I I used this particular fabric, so I've cut out 2 pieces like this out of the flower with the butterfly and 2 of my solid pieces right there. And they're all the same size. And this is just stitching out. I need a little drink of water there, excuse me. And now I'm just going to advance it 1 step because I didn't have it stitch out the numbers. So if we look here on my, oops, there we go. If we look right here, it's telling me to put down this piece right here. Now I could put it this way and do these first. So let's think about this. This is really the lighter of my 2 fabrics. So I'm going to start with my solids because it's that, that way when I flip, I'm going to end up with that kind of flipping to the dark side idea. So let's take my hoop out right here and lay my fabric down. Right there we go. I actually think that this square might be a little smaller. It's slightly smaller than, whoops, I came on, hang on, I came on unthreaded. Let's go ahead and rethread real quick. So this particular square is just slightly smaller. So these 2 are the same size. The one I'm making right now, the quarter square, I think I chose a pattern that is just slightly smaller than this one. We'll see in the end how this turned out. Okay, there we go. Now this one, it says, only takes 3 minutes to stitch out. How easy is that? Now my next piece has a line right here. So that's for this particular square. Now remember, second squares are always laid face down, but you have to look at this for a moment because remember, if I put this right here and I go to flip it, that's not right. So this piece goes like this, right? The point is here. So if I lay my piece out right on there, how it's supposed to look, and then flip it over, then it's perfect. Or again, just line it up with right sides together with your first piece of fabric. And again, if you want to give it a little tape down, you can do that as well. Alrighty. Now I'm going to take off this little piece of tape and I'm going to flip. Now, you don't have to take these out of the hoop to flip. So your hoop doesn't really have to come out of here. I'm just giving that a little finger press, a little roll here. Now here is where, if you want, this is really laying flat. I probably wouldn't normally, but you can put a little bit of glue stick under that fabric and stick this piece right down. It's laying nice and flat. Oops. Okay. There we go. And this will stitch the rest of this down. And I wanted to show you this one because this one works slightly different than the half square triangle. The half square triangle was all done at once, right? Well, this one kind of is, but there's a little extra step to it that I wanted to make sure that you knew. Oops, there we go. All right, so now I'm going to stitch out my upper piece, and this is done here at the bottom. I don't need to do anything to it. Okie doke, we're almost done there. It's just stitching out this last little piece. I'll lift that up. Now, if I, that's my next step, there we go. Now, it's showing me that I need to do this piece right here, or the light color fabric, because it's the piece directly across from it. Now, again, it is done right side up, because technically we're doing two separate halves, and then we're going to stitch them together. So this piece is technically our first piece. I'm going to lay it right side up. And if you notice, it's not stitching over the stitch line here, and there's a reason for that. Okay, now I've got this piece right here, this next step that's telling me it's going to do that attachment line. So I just lay my pieces right sides together, just like we did on the other half. And you can put your little piece of tape there. And stitch that down. Okay. Now I'm going to flip this over just like that. Give it a little press with my little seam roller. Get that good and crisp. I'm going to put this right back in and let it finish stitching out. Okay, now technically this is a 2/3 piece, I guess you could say. We have done one half and the second half, and I used a little too much fabric, so I could actually trim this down a little bit. Let me get a pair of my I love these double curved scissors like this for trimming, so I'm just going to trim this down to about 1/4 of an inch. I used slightly bigger, I cut out slightly a bigger piece than I needed. There we go. So I just trimmed that down a little bit. Now, in this scenario, if I go back into here, into my machine, there's another file. There's this one right here. And what this file does, oops, sorry. You know, that was the correct one I was supposed to choose. Anyway, so there is another file. What you would do is you would take this out of the hoop now. Oops, didn't mean to hit that. There. You just take this out of the hoop. You're going to re-hoop another piece of stabilizer, because now what you're going to do is you're going to cut these in half, or what I like to do is just, again, cut around the whole outside. Let me get a pair of scissors and do that. You could use a rotary cutter if you want. I just don't have a rotary cutter right here. So I'm just going to cut around my block. And I'm not worried that I'm having to cut perfectly, because I'm going to trim things up at the end. just a little bit more. Okay, now I'm just going to throw my excess stabilizer down here in the bin. Now, what I can do is I can flip these right in half, just like that. Go over to my machine, my sewing machine, if I wish, and sew. I know it's hard to see here because I didn't use a darker thread. Sew right on that line. In fact, I like to sew one stitch to the inside of that line. Just put your needle on that line and then drop it and push it one over and then stitch. And then when you're done and it's like this, right? And you unfold it, it's all together. Now, you can do that on your sewing machine or on your embroidery machine, because your embroidery machine file may give you one additional step where you rehoop everything and then you restitch this. I don't like using the extra stabilizer to do that, so I just do this process on my sewing machine. And because I have a line there, I'm going to get it right because I just sew right on that line, or right one needle click to the inside of that. And then when I'm done, I just do a nice trim up so that it's got that 1/4 inch. And then these are actually the same size at this point, so we'll go ahead and show this. Let me just flip that. And you can see there would be 2 of them together, and you can see what kind of a pattern I'm starting to get there. Or we could do the opposite fabrics, and you could start seeing different things there. So these are the 2 most basic blocks that we do in quilting. And let me just take that back out. There we go. So those are the 2 most basic blocks we use in quilting: the 1/4 square triangle and the 1/2 square triangle. And I hope you give those a try and practice a few times with them, because you could easily end up making yourself a little quilt, really, with just practice ones, and let it be scrappy. Just choose different fabrics for each one and let it be kind of a little scrappy test quilt top for you. I think you will love that. And if you have any questions on piecing these blocks, drop a comment in the comment box below. I'll be happy to answer those. Or you can also contact me at my website. Oh, nope, that's the wrong one. That's the wrong one. Here we go. You can also contact me at my website, www.sewincommon.com. There's a place for you to leave me messages there or send me an email as well. So I hope that you all enjoyed that. I hope that answered some questions for you. I'm always available to answer your questions if you have questions that you need answered. So until next time, quilt with me, or try stitching in the hoop and see how much you love it. There will be another block coming where we'll do a diamond in a square, or a square in a square block. That is another really basic one that we use a lot. In fact, if you see this block behind us, that's an 18-inch block that I did in the hoop. I have my square in a square. That's the next video coming. There are my 1/4 squares. You can see those. So, and then this one right here is a 1/2 square, but it's a modified 1/2 square. And there will be a video where we talk about modified 1/2 square triangles as well. So until next time, folks, I'll tell you what I tell you every single time. Go sew life beautiful. I know you will. Bye for now, everybody.